All right, so welcome everyone to today's number 3 Thrive webinar as part of this lovely 5-part series on thriving women's relationships. And today the topic is boundaries and assertiveness, healing from the subjugation schema. Because it's impossible to create a thriving, healthy relationship with a partner without boundaries and without at times having a bit of conflict, some confrontation, a bit of a discussion and hard conversations about the two different people's needs. And this is totally normal and healthy in long-term intimate relationships, for there to be times where someone's feelings get hurt, someone doesn't feel considered, and this needs to be said and it needs to be put on the table. And by expressing how we feel and asserting our needs and communicating our boundaries, that allows the other person to really get to know us as an individual, get to know what it is that makes us tick, and how two people can live in harmony. It doesn't just magically happen. We don't read each other's minds. This happens through hard conversations with the goal of, over time, two people really learning each other's boundaries, really learning about what causes the other person to feel safe and loved and what causes them to feel hurt, and adjusting our behaviours as we go along. That's what we're aiming for. All right, so let's make a start. And as you know, I like to start these webinars with a healing imagery to really help us get into our bodies. Okay, because a lot of the changes that we make in our relationships need to be integrated within our bodies. It's no good just having a mental concept of something. Our body needs to take it on board. And we need to understand the feelings that come with these new states of thriving, what it feels like in our bodies when we have healthy boundaries. And many of us may not have experienced that feeling in our body before, but that's the beauty of the imagination. All right, so here we go. So I invite everyone to close their eyes to do this imagery. And I will switch off my camera. So closing your eyes, take a few breaths in and out. And imagine that you are standing on top of a hill. And imagine that there is a 1 meter radius, an invisible line around your whole body. Just take a moment to get a sense of this space that is you. Now take a moment to reflect on what is it that makes up your sense of self. What is it that occupies this space that tells you that it's you? So start with some I am statements. You could start by saying your name. I am Susie. Say your age. I'm 33. And say your gender. I am female. Now say something about your temperament, your nature, your personality. could be I'm shy, or I'm reserved, or I'm loud, I'm introverted, I'm extroverted, I'm impulsive, I wear my heart on my sleeve, I'm cautious, I like to think things through, whatever. Now say something about your hopes and dreams for your life. It could be whatever your heart desires. I want to live in a city apartment. I want to live in the country. I want 3 kids and a dog. I want a simple life. I want a glamorous life. Whatever your heart desires. Now say something about your sensitivities or quirks. Something that others might find unusual about you. You might say, I cry at the news. Or I can't stand seeing injustices. Now say something about your values in life and your values in a relationship. You might say, respect and honesty is really important to me. Or having the freedom to make my own choices about my friendships and my jobs is really important to me. So just take a moment to experience the fullness of this space that is you. And don't worry if it feels a bit sparse or a bit vague or a bit confusing right now. There is still plenty of time to still get to know yourself. For some of us, this happens well into midlife. And it just starts with a simple process of tuning into your likes and dislikes. Ask yourself, when do you feel pleasure or love or connection in your body? And when do you feel fear or apprehension or disgust or hurt in your body? Just take a moment to realize this simple process of getting to know yourself through your body's positive and negative reactions to everything around you. Now imagine taking this sense of self and identity and being in relationship with a partner long term. Take with you this same sense of this 1 meter radius around your body, and also the same for your partner. Imagine that you are both able to preserve your unique sense of self within this relationship, without one person needing to shrink and contract, nor one person taking up all of the space and suffocating out the other. Just 2 people living in harmony, both with their unique sense of self and also a closeness that allows them both to create a harmonious relationship together. And when you're ready, you can bring your attention back into your body, into your chair, and slowly wriggle your fingers Wriggle your toes and open your eyes. Okay, so maybe just take a moment to see if anyone wanted to share anything about that imagery. And if you can hear the chickens in the background. Bok, bok, bok. So the purpose of that imagery exercise was to help check in with yourself about your sense of identity, sense of self. You are you. Who are you? You're you. There's only one you, unique. And I've got feedback that's feeling nice and grounded and relaxed. My pleasure. So yeah, just having that sense of you will need to occupy a space in life and in your relationships, because there's only one of you and only you can express what is true for you. And in a long-term relationship, obviously that's very important to have this separate sense of self, because otherwise, if two people don't express their own unique perspective, then one person will dominate with their perspective, and then it becomes, it feels unfair, it feels unbalanced, and it doesn't feel like an equal partnership. All right, so that's a lovely imagery that, of course, you could come back to at any time yourself, or you could use with your own clients, even if it's just from an assessment perspective, just to see what comes up for them, to see how developed this sense of self is, because that's going to be a really important platform for boundaries and assertiveness, which we're going to cover today. All right. So here we have a little toddler. Why are we talking about toddlers when we're talking about intimate relationships? Well, let me explain. So healthy relationships are obviously made up of two individuals. Okay, and in terms of when our individuality first develops, it is very early on in life. From the minute we can crawl and the minute we can say no, we start the process of individuation as separate beings to our caregivers, as having this sort of sense of, well, we're not our mother, we're not our primary caregiver, we are a separate being. Whereas, you know, up until that point, the baby identifies themselves as the same as the primary caregiver. So in a healthy system or in a healthy family, the parents and caregivers will recognize, you know, the individual differences in all members of the family, you know, including their different temperaments, their likes and dislikes, their personality, their energy, their preferences for hobbies and desires and goals, especially sort of, you know, later on in life as they hit the teenage years and they start to really get in touch with this individuality again. Okay, so when we receive a positive message about our developing self, we feel safe to occupy the space that is us. We feel safe to express an opinion about something or express a need about something, because we have this sense that our own individual perspective will be honoured or welcomed. And also, we don't have this unconscious urge to always have to argue our point when our own individuality is honoured. And we don't feel the need to fight it out with someone who differs in their perspective to ours, because there is an inherent sense of our unique individuality being honoured. So we end up accepting the unique individual differences of everyone, including those close to us and including our intimate partner. Okay, so you can see the importance of honouring individual temperaments and little personalities early on in life. And for the few people that experience that. Well, I don't know, like how many people experience that? In our line of work, we tend to work more with situations where the individual temperaments and natures and emerging personalities of the child were not welcomed and not celebrated, with a lot of negative messages about individuality. Okay. Now, moving on to this concept of yin and yang, and many of you know by now that I love looking at feminine and masculine energy and balance. So take a moment now to reflect on the individual differences between a more feminine energy partner and a more masculine energy partner. Okay, and this is a lovely image here of this yin and yang balance, you know, the differences, the two unique, separate beings that make up a whole. All right, so when I say a more feminine energy partner in an intimate relationship setting, I'm not sure what images come to mind for you at first, but the things that come to mind for me are the person in the relationship who is probably more connected to moment by moment emotions. The person who may be more guided by emotions and intuition when making the sort of small and big decisions in life. Maybe the person in the relationship that's more sensitive to other people's mood and energy, more, you know, picking up on the mood and the energy of the people around them, and having a real awareness and empathy of other people. Maybe the person that's more attuned to the needs of others, and you know, making assumptions about the needs of others based on what they know about that person and what they're saying and the non-verbal communication and all of that. And also it may be the person who prioritizes relational needs at times over individual needs. So a lot of these qualities would be associated with a more feminine energy partner in a relationship. And they kind of all come under the umbrella of connection. Okay, whereas a more masculine energy partner in an intimate relationship might be the person in the relationship who's more focused on the big picture or the long-term goals for the relationship. The one that may see themselves as more responsible or having greater capacity for financial security of the household. Even if both partners are equally see themselves as equally responsible or have the same capacity, or maybe the other partner has a greater capacity for financial security in the relationship, but the one who identifies as more masculine at their core will have this really deep down sense of responsibility for creating that. This one may be more rational and logical in their approach to problem solving as opposed to more emotion focused. And this one may see emotional control and inhibition as a strength or virtue, something to be practiced, as opposed to emotional expression. Okay, so these are not hard and fast differences. They're just meant to paint a picture of these two different energies. I want you all to have a sense of these two different energies both being equally important to come together because they both have gifts. And also you get to have an appreciation of the polarity that naturally happens in many intimate relationships. One person's down this end and the other person's down this end on a matter. And if both people were the same, if they were both down this end, there would probably be no romantic connection there to begin with. When you get two people that are the same or coming from a very similar energy, it's more likely to be a friendship. And think about your friends, both male and female, where there isn't that attraction or romantic polarity, because it feels like you're both on exactly the same page. You could be siblings or friends. Okay. So just take a moment to close your eyes and allow these two energies to blend and complement each other. Not blend in the sense of not being able to detect the boundaries or where the line is, but more of a coming together, a combining together. So everything in life involves both of these energies working together, and this is the dance of connection and autonomy. And they both have gifts. Both feminine and masculine energies are gifts in relationships. Both very important. Okay, so now let's talk about the messages that young girls frequently got about expressing anger, which actually is a fundamental aspect of feminine energy. All emotional expression, you could say, is a really fundamental aspect of feminine energy. Okay, so just take a moment, maybe any of you that wants to come off mute, that's fine. But think about, what are some of the messages that we might get or young girls might get when they're growing up about being angry or challenging someone or saying no or confronting another person, challenging another person. Maybe that's changing now, hopefully. But when I grew up, there was still that poem around, what a little girl's made of, sugar and spice and all things nice. I wish I knew, excuse me, I wish I knew what that was doing at that time. The gaslighting in that little poem there. Communicating the message that when little girls express their anger, it's untoward or unbecoming of a little girl. And it's a way to silence feminine anger, a way to silence relational anger. Because relational anger challenges the other person to do something different, to take responsibility, to have accountability. And in some systems, that doesn't benefit the other person. It's really important to reflect on, what messages little girls might have got in particular about expressing anger. So did anyone want to join in or even sort of share any of their clients' stories?
I've got one.
Great. Yes, go Leah.
But it's me. So,
yes.
So it's my story. So
yeah.
I grew up with, you can be angry. You can just be like, probably, what's the word? Very assertive. You tell it how it is. You be very independent and not rude, but you stand up for yourself. And that, I think that's to do with my family heritage. Like my mum is Croatian, my dad's German. Okay. I marry a Maori. This has been a massive issue
Yeah.
in our relationship, because he grew up with, there's one matriarch and whatever she says goes, and you don't have voice. And I'm like, well, I do. And so he's like, what do you mean you do? Well, I grew up with it being okay. And he's like, you don't say anything about anything to anyone. And I'm like, not to, like putting me down. That was just how he grew up. And so there's been challenges for me and my mother-in-law, because there's a matriarch and a patriarch, and you follow that sort of line. And when I challenge things, challenging is not seen as acceptable. So it's been an interesting space. Obviously, we've still been able to navigate it. We're still married 16 years later.
Amazing.
And he feels it's very good to have boundaries, and he has done a complete 360 in how he views things. And it's definitely, I mean, it was challenging to start with, but it's not challenging anymore, because he's like, I see the benefit of that. I see that that's helpful. And so, yeah, it's been really good. I mean, I grew up with that. He didn't grow up with that. But then, you know, there was definitely a weird space, like a woman can actually say something. Yeah. So
wow. That is such a great story to share. Thank you so much for sharing, because it demonstrates exactly what we're talking about in this webinar, which is, you know, the short-term discomfort that comes with saying something that your partner doesn't agree with can be worked through, and then the beauty comes later on. You know, the gifts.
And actually, it's funny you should say that, because that is a word that he has said. He goes, I think this has been a gift. And I'm like, who are you?
I
know. But I think he's like, wow, it's not good to be one-sided, because I think it's improved his friendships. And don't get me wrong, I've learned a lot of things from him, like to calm my farm and to like fly by the seat of my pants and enjoy spontaneity. I remember the first session you did about getting in the car on a Saturday morning and leaving it to your partner. I was like, oh my goodness gracious, that would be horrific. But now I'm getting better at it, because I'm
that's
like,
amazing.
Gotta let it go. I trust him, but I do like order, but that's my own core beliefs. Yeah.
Oh, wow. That is a spectacular story. Thank you so much for sharing that, because it just really ties into this image here, this yin yang. So, you know, one person saying, you know, honoring family is really important, and the matriarch, and the other person saying, well, my own individual autonomy is important, and both listening to one another and taking the gifts from each other and integrating it. That's really what we're going for here. It's so great. And also, like Leah just shared, it can be a real long journey, okay? You know, this can take...
I'm laughing because it is.
yeah, exactly. It is like, you know, 16, to get to 16 years and to have worked through something like that, you get to experience all the gold, really, because when two people can be honored, and when two people's unique perspective can be honored and integrated, then they can really live in harmony together and honor and respect these two different viewpoints that you would never have considered before, because it wasn't like that in the culture that you grew up in. Okay, super important. Yeah, like in my coaching with my ladies, you know, I tell them about patterns that I'm still working through sort of 8 years into my relationship, but you see the sort of the gradual shifts and the growth, and that's a lovely thing. Okay, so yeah, that's a great discussion. Think about messages that little girls got growing up, but also little boys, and what permission might have been given to little boys and not to little girls, and vice versa, and some of these gender-based stories. All right. So let's chat about children's anger, just children's anger in general, not just girls, but children's anger. This is how I describe describe children's anger. Might not always feel like this, but it's pure and innocent. It's pure and innocent. It's coming from a very good place, a very innocent place in a child when they get angry. It can be unfiltered and spontaneous, kind of just like blurts out without thinking about, is this the right time or place to express this? Or what's going to happen if I, express this anger? It's just unfiltered and spontaneous. It can be intense or chaotic. Okay, it can feel a little bit unsettling to be around. Like there's a real energy about it. It is connected to emotional pain and hurt. And that's why I call it relational anger, because it's anger that arises in the context of an otherwise safe and loving relationship, or what's meant to be a safe and loving relationship. It has the power and the intention to restore justice and fairness. Super important in relationships and in life. Children's anger is heart-centered. You can really get a sense of the child's emotional pain usually. And the words are often, "Stop being mean to me." Now there's a clue. Stop being mean to me. Whenever you feel like saying that to your partner, that's a sign that it's this childlike anger, which is a good energy. It's an important energy that needs to come out and be expressed. Remember, it's pure and innocent, and it has the power to restore justice and fairness. That's not to say that they're the words to pick with your actual partner. Stop being mean to me. But I see nothing wrong with that, actually. That would be preferable to saying nothing at all. Children's anger is not always rational to the other person, especially from their perspective and their values and what they're all about in that moment. But it is 100% true that the child is sensing some kind of disconnection. And they're expressing that. Children's anger is not the same as frustration at having non-core needs met. Like when a child can't get that second piece of cake, or when they can't go to the playground today. They're non-core needs. To not get to go to the playground every time you say you want to go to the playground, that's not a core emotional need in life. That's a preference. It's not going to do any long-term damage to your sense of self to be told that you can't have that second piece of cake or you can't go to the playground today, which, as opposed to being told that your feelings don't matter or your feelings are wrong. Okay, so therefore, children's anger is a vitally important energy in close relationships. And especially in our work with female clients, we need our female clients, and we need all of us to honor this relational anger in ourselves, because it's a channel through which we express assertiveness. The anger, this relational anger, needs to kind of come up and out and be expressed in some way, hopefully in a skilled way, hopefully in a safe way. But holding on to it is not good. It causes all sorts of problems, emotional and I would say physical. Okay, so what is the name of the pattern that happens when we suppress this anger? The name of the schema is the subjugation schema. Okay, so this is the definition of the subjugation schema that Jeffrey Young offers as part of the schema therapy model. He says that it is excessive surrendering of control to others because one feels coerced. usually to avoid anger, retaliation, or abandonment. The two major forms of subjugation are subjugation of needs, suppression of one's preferences, decisions, and desires, or subjugation of emotions, so suppression of emotional expression, especially anger. It usually involves the perception that one's own desires, opinions, and feelings are not valid or important to others, frequently presents as excessive compliance combined with hypersensitivity to feeling trapped. It generally leads to a buildup of anger manifested in maladaptive symptoms such as passive-aggressive behaviour, uncontrolled outbursts of temper, psychosomatic symptoms, withdrawal of affection, acting out, or substance abuse. So you can see that this subjugation pattern is quite destructive when it comes to intimate relationships, because even if it feels safe in the short term to suppress our feelings and suppress our anger and be compliant, in the long term, it's going to lead to all of these destructive patterns that is going to make it feel to the person who's subjugating, it's going to feel to them as if it's not safe for them to be themselves. Okay, so I'm going to just come off mute, Leah.
Yeah, I just want to ask, is that like being self-sacrificing out of fear, like doing too much because you're scared of like anger or scared of abandonment, or that's not what that means?
Yeah, I would say that that's a form of subjugation, because if you are always cleaning up the house because you're scared of retaliation, then I guess that suggests that having a messy house in the past has led to some kind of explosive outburst from a partner. Yeah. So you're like, oh, I better make sure the house is clean because I've picked up that they get very angry and explosive whenever the house is messy. Okay, so which is slightly different to self-sacrifice, which doesn't necessarily come with that fear. It's just this automatic assuming that everyone else's needs are more important than yours. But if it's coming from a place of fear of retaliation, then that is what we call subjugation. Okay. Yes, so that is the pattern that we're healing today in this webinar on boundaries and assertiveness. Okay, so what we're going to do is another imagery right now that you can use on yourself. You can use in your therapy practice with your clients. And again, I invite you to close your eyes because it's just easier to take it all in then. So just take a moment to close your eyes and imagine that you are in a relationship with somebody. And imagine that your partner has been dismissive or said something insensitive or hurtful. And just take a moment to check in with your body. What do you notice? What thoughts are racing through your head about what this all means? And what do you feel in your belly? What do you feel in your fists? What do you feel in your jaw? And what do you feel in your heart? Once you become aware that your heart hurts, put one hand over your heart and one hand on your belly. Imagine saying to yourself, that hurts my heart. And with your hand on your belly, say, and I don't like that. So just right now, get the sense of your heart center and your solar plexus center in your belly being connected to one another and working together so that you can express how you feel from a deep place of knowing yourself, trusting your own inner guidance to tell you what feels right and good and what feels unloving or unskilled. Okay, and so that you can slowly open your eyes. So in that imagery, what we're doing there is we're connecting the heart, which is that more vulnerable inner child that feels hurt and sad, with the angry child in the middle of our belly, in our solar plexus, which is that sense of, don't do that to me. You're being mean to me. And just a little side note, my 10-year-old daughter, she started saying, stop it, I don't like it. And that's what they're teaching them in school. Stop it, I don't like it. Like, oh, that's lovely. You know, helping her to develop self-expression and assertiveness. But now she says it whenever I say anything, like, okay, it's time for you to go and have your shower. Stop it, I don't like it. So that's the problem sometimes when your child is too self-expressed. But that's what we're going for here in today's webinar, boundaries and assertiveness. What is it that hurts you? What doesn't feel good? And really connecting to your inner strength to express what it is that you want and what it is that you need. Okay, lovely. Okay, so here we're going to talk about why are many women blocked in terms of setting, healthy boundaries in their relationships and asserting their own needs. Why do some of us have such trouble with this? And this is certainly the main schema that I had in my previous marriage, the subjugation schema, where I would maybe say something once, but then if it wasn't received well, then I would shut it down. So we need to ask ourselves, what is the fear behind this self-silencing and this compliance and this fear and avoidance of boundary setting and assertiveness? Okay, well, here are a couple of possibilities. My partner will get sick of me and leave. So that's a fear of abandonment. So often it is this fear that if I create a fuss and I have a need that my partner doesn't like, then they will see that as too difficult and leave. Or I don't know if I'm meant to feel this way. So sometimes there's some real doubt and uncertainty about whether our emotional needs are accurate or correct. And this can come from the emotional deprivation schema or the undeveloped self schema. Not having had a parent or caregiver who's responded positively to the child expressing various needs and emotions. Or the parent projecting their thoughts and feelings onto the child, saying, well, you shouldn't be anxious about that. Or if I were you, I would be happy that that happened to me. It's not honoring the child's individual experience. Okay, another thing that blocks a lot of women from expressing boundaries and asserting their needs is that they're afraid that they wouldn't cope on their own. If their partner did leave and they were left alone, single, that they wouldn't know how to get by in life. So that could be financially or emotionally and socially. Another fear and another schema underlying subjugation could be that no one else would ever have me. This belief that you're unlovable and broken and flawed, and no one else out there would want to have a relationship with you, which is the defectiveness shame schema. Another one is, well, I don't want to say that because I don't want to make them feel bad or hurt their feelings. So that often ties into the self-sacrifice schema, when we may have got messages in childhood that you're not meant to make other people ever feel bad. You should just always put their feelings first as a priority, and don't worry about your own feelings. Just think about how other people feel all of the time in this indiscriminate way. And also that comes with the message that the other person can't cope with having their feelings hurt. And that's usually an old story. That's often a story that a child has gotten about a parent, seeing a parent not cope with getting their feelings hurt and then applying that in life and assuming that our own adult partners can't cope with getting their feelings hurt. But if we're being honest, our feelings get hurt all the time and we cope and we survive. So surely our partners can cope too. Another fear that blocks boundary setting, I'll be told that I'm ungrateful or that I never consider their feelings. So it's this fear of punishment, this punitiveness. I don't want to be seen as a bad person. Okay, so there are just some things to consider about what may be blocking either you or your clients from being more forthcoming with emotions and feelings and opinions, and explore whether there's another pattern underneath that. Okay, now let's start talking about, the wild woman archetype. So this lovely quote by Dr. Clarissa Pinkola Estes: a healthy woman is much like a wolf, robust, chock-full, strong life force, life-giving, territorially aware, involved, roving. I just love that quote because it really stirs up the essence of the wild woman archetype, which is someone who is fiercely guarding her heart and fiercely guarding her relationships, very loyal, which involves expressing anger. And this other quote here: anger is one of her innate ways to begin to reach out and to create and preserve the balances that she holds dear, all the things that she truly loves. It is both her right and at certain times and in certain circumstances, a moral duty. So this is the importance of women's anger and the wild woman. So just see what comes up in you when we use words like the wild woman archetype and women's anger, and the importance of preserving the balances that she holds dear. Just notice where that stirs up something in your body. And for some of us, it sort of stirs something in the belly. Sometimes it could be a feeling of rage, which is something that we would want to work with carefully with a therapist. If there's a lot of rage in there, because that rage needs to be integrated and honored. But if you trust the wild woman archetype and allow her to feature in your life and in your relationship, then I can assure you that she will take you somewhere good. And I think we've already seen a lovely example of that today with Leah, is just this honoring of the individual emotions that are stirring within in the belly and expressing them and putting them on the table and not swallowing them and suppressing them and holding them back. Yes, so I highly recommend that book, Women Who Run with the Wolves. She's a Jungian analyst. It's a hard read, And another great book is Untamed by Glennon Doyle Melton, who, and that's a much easier read, but both tapping into the wild woman archetype. All right, so feel free to put your hand up if there's any questions, but I'm going to keep going. All right, so here are some examples of boundaries that may need to be set in intimate relationships with a partner. Time boundaries. So we've all got multiple demands in our life, and there are going to be times where we need to say no to a partner, such as, a request to go to the in-laws. So I notice sometimes I feel guilty if my partner says, oh, we're going out to my folks' house for lunch on Sunday, and I haven't had any time to myself, and I haven't just been in my own little space, and I've just been surrounded by people all day, every day, children, clients, etc. And so that would be an example of a time boundary, saying, look, no, I'm going to have to say no because I just really need this time to myself. Okay, other boundaries, relationship behavior. So our responses to the feeling-based issues that hurt us, and even attachment-based responses in our partners. So if they tend to withdraw when there's conflict, that could be a sign of a more avoidant attachment style. Or if they tend to scold us or attack us, then that could be a sign of a more anxious attachment style. But these need to be on the table. These things need to be on the table, these relationship behaviours. Put them on the table so we can work through them and talk about how they impact us. Flirting with other people and managing the threat of the third. Okay, so the threat of the third, I'm pretty sure that this is Stan Tatkin's term, where he says that all relationships, well, let's say a relationship between two people, a committed monogamous relationship, there's always a threat of the third. These are outside threats that can threaten the stability of the relationship, and they could include ex-partners, work colleagues, casual acquaintances, in-laws, alcohol and other substances, gambling, a demanding workplace, children, etc. These all have to be spoken about, and two people need to navigate the boundaries around, the threat of the third. How are we going to acknowledge what comes up in our partner, and how are we going to also express what comes up in us when these outside forces are at play? Sexual intimacy is a boundary. So both needing the time and space and the freedom to say no, or to say not yet, or to say slow down, or I need space, and to speak your own truth. But at the same token, there can also be an expression of longing for more sexual intimacy and wanting to talk about it, wanting it to be on the table. So it's not just one person that is allowed to have a say on this topic. It's both partners may see things differently, and they are an example of boundaries to be considered in an intimate relationship. Okay, and also the money and the non-financial contributions to the relationship. What feels fair to both people? Okay, so the old-fashioned way would be to say, well, I earn this much, I earn the most money, therefore I get to make all the decisions. But that's important to step away from that and say money isn't the only contribution that is made to a relationship. There are plenty of non-financial contributions that are also being made to a relationship, and all of these need to be honoured. Mood. Mood is another boundary issue in relationships. So sometimes modeling from our childhood may mean that we come to believe that projecting a bad mood onto a partner is acceptable and should be tolerated, because maybe that's what happened in the early child environment. Is, you know, whenever mum was angry at dad or dad was angry at mum, they felt entitled to just project that onto the other person, and the other person wasn't allowed to set a boundary around self-control and mood management. That's a big one for me. Partly because I go to great lengths to make sure that I don't project negative mood onto other people, and to be super considerate of other people. So I feel that it's only fair that that is reciprocated in my own relationship. So that's certainly something that I've navigated before. Is, you know, you're allowed to be angry or frustrated, but I want you to be mindful of how that gets projected onto me. Okay, so any other boundaries? I mean, this isn't necessarily an exhaustive list, but this is a list that, you know, comes up time and time again in intimate relationships, and they're things that we want to work through. So let me know if there's any questions to these examples of boundaries. Okay, otherwise we're going to move on to Socratic questioning. So this is another lovely technique, very common in cognitive therapy, made popular, I suppose, by Aaron Beck. And I love how Jeffrey Young has really mastered this Socratic questioning, and the way that we can ask questions to our clients that will help them join the dots and maybe understand where they first learned these unhealthy messages about emotional expression and anger. Okay, so we could ask a client, if we're doing therapy with them and they have the subjugation schema, we could ask questions like, when did you first learn that it was unsafe for you to express your anger or disapproval about something? And they will then give you examples of that. And what message did you receive as a child about expressing anger at a parent? Or did you ever feel guilty or responsible for challenging a parent, even if you felt it was right to speak up? Or what could you say to your inner child these days about the importance of anger and having your own opinions and needs? And what are the conditions that you would need in a relationship in order to feel safe to express your anger? And what would you need to address in yourself in order to feel safe to continually return to expressing your truth and not let something important ever get swept under the carpet? Okay, super important questions to be able to ask a client. It will get them thinking about the blocks in them that they have to work through. Okay. Okay, so that last question, which is, you know, what is it in you that you would need to address? That really taps into a skill that we need to teach our female clients, and that we need to kind of be to some degree, is we need to be able to tolerate discomfort in the face of conflict. If you can't tolerate the discomfort, you will do anything to avoid confrontation. You'll smooth it over, you'll apologize, you'll backpedal. Okay, if we can stretch our capacity to tolerate the discomfort in the face of conflict, then we get the gifts that come out the other side of this self-expression. Okay, so if you have a low tolerance for interpersonal tension, you may shy away from reasserting your needs and opinions. And the reason I say reasserting is that sometimes we're really good at asserting our needs or opinions once. We say, hey, please don't do that. But then guess what? They forget and they do it again. And if we can't stand conflict or we feel uncomfortable with the tension that arises from these difficult conversations, we're likely to maybe not say it again and give up and say, well, I already told him that. And I see this all the time in therapy is, when you say, well, have you expressed that? Have you shared that with your partner? And the client may say, yes, I already said it once, and they keep doing it. I say, well, have you raised it again? And often it's like, well, no, there's no point. There's no point in saying it over and over again. And my motto is, there's a very good point in saying it over and over and over and over again. Okay, because it takes many, many attempts to land the plane. Okay. Also, if you've got a low tolerance for this tension, it is likely to be that your body memory, so the memories stored in your body from past experiences, is telling you to run or telling you to appease them, just to keep the peace and abandon your own truth. That was your survival response back then in childhood. And you have this body memory that's saying, don't rock the boat. Don't make things worse here. Just do whatever it takes to keep the peace. Okay, so it's not a one-off event, this assertiveness. You say it over and over and over and over again. And I can assure you, in a healthy system, there will be just longer and longer gaps between when you have to express your boundaries, because your partner gets better at learning about who you are. I'm not saying that the old habits disappear altogether, but it becomes less and less frequent. Therefore, you feel more honored as you go along in time. Okay, so it's important to stretch our capacity to tolerate interpersonal tension that comes with conflict. Conflict is just a natural process by which two people come to express their differing needs and perspectives in a relationship so they can create harmony and mutual understanding. And by accepting the anger that arises in us naturally in the face of our personal boundaries being challenged, we just accept, well, this is natural, but I feel this way. Then we can view the interpersonal tension as just a healthy process and something that will lead to a safer connection over time. Okay, so I'm talking about a process in a healthy system right now. I'm talking about a process that is a bit clunky, can create a bit of defensiveness, a bit of pushback, a bit of resistance in the early stages. But over time, there's more honoring, there's more respect, there's more mutual understanding that develops. Okay. However, a partner who routinely shuts down the other person's viewpoint, perspectives, and feelings is not likely capable or ready to create a healthy adult-to-adult intimate relationship. And it's more likely to feel like they're stuck in a parent-child dynamic of relating. Okay, so, arguing from time to time is normal, but it shouldn't be the only form of working through individual feelings and needs. Like if every conversation that is had involves someone raising their needs or a different perspective and that leads to an argument, then there's not a lot of room for growth or integrating two people's needs. And the relationship will start to feel a bit like one person is a parent and the other person is a child. And that's going to interfere with the romantic chemistry in the relationship because neither partner sees the other as their equal romantic adult partner. The one in the child role resents being controlled and parented by their partner. And the one in the parent role resents having to do all the emotional labor and use self-control all the time and suppress their feelings and only make space for their partner's feelings. So this is often the point where a couple might seek out couples therapy because they're stuck in this parent-child dynamic. But it could be avoided when one partner refuses to engage in this dynamic and insists on a more mature way of communicating about hard topics. So if it was me and I was continually met with defensiveness from my partner, I probably would say something like, I don't want to argue about my feelings. Let's just take a moment. Okay, so what are we trying to activate in our female clients? Are you ready for it? Their own inner masculine. It's a lovely, giving, protective life force inside of them. Okay, so let's return to the concept of Jung's individuation and wholeness. Jung says that we're all made up of feminine and masculine energies or parts. Now, even if one of those energies is more dominant in our personality, the way that we can help our female clients to create more thriving and balanced and harmonious relationships with a partner is to put them in touch with their own inner masculine. Okay, so what the inner masculine is not, it's not the part of you that is scolding or bitter or hostile or bitchy or sarcastic or passive aggressive or punishing. Jung calls this the animus, when it's unintegrated and unconscious and we project it onto the outside world. I just want to read this lovely quote to you by Emma Jung. According to Emma Jung, the animus is first experienced by projecting it onto a man in the outside world, such as a father, husband, or friend, who becomes her guide and intermediary. This guide and intermediary then becomes the bearer or representative of the animus in image. In other words, this person, this male figure, becomes the representative of the masculine in them, which they've disconnected from. She describes projection as not only the transference of an image to another person, but also of the activities that go with it, so that a man to whom the animus image has been transferred is expected to take over all the functions that have remained undeveloped in the woman in question, whether the thinking function or the power to act or responsibility toward the outside world. This is huge. When we project masculine qualities onto a real life man, we often do that in childhood, we see that person as having all the strength, all the capacity to assert themselves, to be autonomous. And we've disconnected from it within ourselves. Okay. So I just want you to locate the inner masculine in your body right now. It's in the solar plexus region, the middle of your belly. Just have a look at this lovely image of this woman standing straight and strong, having a really good sense of herself. And the strength is in the middle, just above the belly button. Okay, so the solar plexus chakra. Okay, so this solar plexus chakra has a masculine energy, and it governs our personality, ego, identity, as well as personal freedom, choice, and authenticity. Love it. When we can rely on our own inner masculine, we can assert our needs in our relationship without being too affected by the other person's response. It's coming just from a very autonomous, independent place in us. Okay, so now let's take this sense of inner masculine and turn it into an asserting of needs. So here are some examples of things that we might express in our relationship. And I like this exercise, get your clients to write down, I want a relationship where, and come up with a whole bunch of bullet points. Say to them, what kind of relationship do you want? And they have to generate that themselves. They have to go inwards to say, well, this is what I want. Okay, they have to have influence in their relationship. So some examples that I've written here, I want to relate, and these would all be things that I personally want, but a lot of my female clients also want. Very common, but also a lot of men want these exact same things as well. I want a relationship where we consider each other's feelings. We hold space for each other. We respect each other when it comes to how we are in public. We use self-control during hard conversations. We practice patience with each other. And we are open to each other's point of view, even if it makes us feel bad or uncomfortable to hear. So I'm not saying that I've ever sat in front of my partner and said all of this, one bullet point after the other, but they are certainly beliefs that I hold very strongly about what I want in relationship. And so, when I have that sense of self, clear sense of values and who I am, then that comes across more in just the day-to-day interactions, not necessarily a big conversation, but just in a sort of moment by moment transactions in relationships. All right. So now let's move on to a therapy technique that I use frequently in my therapy practice, in my coaching with women, and in my trainings. And it is a chair dialogue. So by now you know that I love chair work. And also it's very powerful because it can bring up all of the emotions, all of the feelings, the sensations that you would get in a real life conversation with someone. Okay, so let me demonstrate. So in this chair dialogue, it's a 3-part dialogue. I'm going to send you, all of the instructions. So you don't need to, write notes or anything like that. So it requires you to preferably have 2 chairs, and it can be done online or in person in your office, or at home if it's just you wanting to work through something with your own partner. You just need 2 chairs facing each other. Okay, so one chair is you, the other chair is your partner. And think about something that you would want to express to them through assertive language. So it could relate to a boundary violation, a behavior that hurt you. It could have seemed intentional to you, but it could also have been unintentional. Either way, it's unskilled at the very least, and it's also a habit that's not yet conscious in your partner if they keep doing it and doing it, it keeps hurting your feelings. All right. So to do the chair dialogue, I would invite my client to sit in the chair that is them. Say, okay, I want you to sit in this chair and opposite is your partner. You can just take a moment, look over at your partner. What do you see? What sort of facial expression do they have? What's the mood? And what are you feeling in your body? And that's just to sort of help them to get insight into the responses that they have during conflict. Okay, right. So, okay, we're ready for step 1. Okay, say to my client, I want you to speak to your partner now, and I'm going to help you with what to say. Are you ready? She says yes. Okay, say, okay, look over at your partner and say, I want to share something about me. And she repeats that. I feel hurt when my feelings are dismissed. And she says that to him, her, whoever. When I share with you that I am upset, I want you to pause and tune into me. or hold space for me. Okay, so in there is being a request about what she wants whenever there's a particular event or behavior. When she's sharing with her partner that she's upset, I want you to pause and tune into me, hold space for me. And if you like, you can check in with your client, say, how is that for you? What's going on for you? She might be saying that she's feeling very nervous, very anxious at this point. Go, okay, good. All right. Now I want you to shift chairs. Come and sit over in this chair. I want you to be your partner now. Okay, so your client has shifted chairs, or if it's you doing it, you're shifting chairs and you're sitting in the chair of the partner. Okay, and you say to your client, now be your partner. I want you to respond to Sarah to what she's said. And usually something very amazing happens is that we respond in quite a similar way to how a partner would respond in this situation, because we know them and we have a sense of their energy. Okay, so the response might be a defensive response. So when in the chair of the partner, your client may be saying, I don't know what you mean. It's not like it's my fault, or, you know, I've got so much going on at the moment. And whatever it is, it sort of shuts down the feelings and the perspective of your client. And your job as the facilitator is not to challenge the partner or to argue with the partner. That's not the trap that we want to fall into. You could just say, okay, anything else? Anything else? Anything else? Okay, good. And just that act alone is helping your client, actually. When you're saying to this partner, which is actually them being their partner, when you're saying anything else, anything else, your regulation, your emotional regulation, you're modeling to your client that you can hear what they have to say without arguing back. Okay, and then you say to your client, okay, come back to your original chair, be you. So this is step 3. Return to your own chair. Now say to your client, notice the feeling in your body in response to your partner's defensiveness or what your partner has said. What's going on? Just pause. Just allow the tension, the awkwardness to be there. Notice your inner child feeling misunderstood or uncared for. Okay, can you reassure her that her feelings are correct? She's right to feel hurt and angry. And you're sorry that her partner can't see that right now. Okay, and you could say to your client, just notice the soothing and the emotional regulation that occurs when your inner child feels seen. And you can encourage your client to reassure her inner child that you can cope with temporary discomfort and not everything needs to get resolved immediately. And there's always a chance to come back to this conversation when your partner's more open and receptive to your feelings. And that you won't allow important things to just get swept under the carpet. Notice the feeling in your own body when you draw from your own inner strength like that. Notice the sense of inner power that you have within you, the strength that comes with knowing who you are, what your values are, and also knowing how you feel and what feels safe and what feels unsafe. Take a moment to really experience your own autonomy and independence, having a view and a perspective that no one else can fully see or appreciate or understand. But that's okay, because you understand yourself. Now it's time to speak to your partner one more time. Just notice any urge that you might have to back down or to backpedal or to apologize or to explain things. And stop. Don't do that. Okay. Now when you're ready, turn to your partner and say from this place of autonomy, it doesn't feel to me like you're open to hearing about how I feel right now. Let's talk about this a bit later on. I need some space right now to myself. Okay, so that's the end of the chair dialogue. And then you can debrief with your client and say, what was it like to say that, especially that last piece, because what that's done is that's created some space where they will then retreat and be on their own. So that can really activate feelings of abandonment. At this point, they're like, oh, I'm afraid, of the uncertainty. I can't tolerate the uncertainty. It's left unresolved. And then you can really help your client to say, it's okay. There's a lot of magic going on in this space. You have no idea. People need space to process this, to take on board what you've said. Okay, not have it shoved down their throat, but in their own time to really process what you've said and what you're asking for. And to also regulate their own emotions and feel a bit more centered and a bit more grounded themselves before they can take on board your perspective. Okay, so this is also something that you could encourage your clients to raise with their partners outside of the context of an argument. You could sort of encourage your clients to say to their partner, look, if I'm feeling like I'm really upset about something and I'm not feeling heard or seen by you, I feel like it's probably better for me in those moments to not keep arguing my feelings with you. How do you feel about me taking space in those moments? So you can see how lovely and proactive that is to raise that and say, look, this is what is going to feel probably better for me, safer for me. I want to make sure that you're okay with that too, but I don't want to get caught in these sort of having to argue for my feelings. Okay. Practice that on your clients. Do it. You will love it. They will love it. It'll be transformational. And it allows so much healing to happen because it allows them to develop more capacity to tolerate the discomfort. It allows them to practice and rehearse some actual words that they can use in the context of arguments. And it also helps them to regulate the anxiety that comes with when things aren't resolved immediately, when there's that sort of uncertainty. That's so important, to be able to step back from the relationship, step away, and to just be on our own and trust that there's magic happening, even though we're not together and we can't talk it out, that we're both sort of in our own space. There's a lot of processing going on that's really important. And it's really important that at times we do that alone in the relationship. Because sometimes when we're together, we're just too activated and it's just a war zone. And we can say terrible things when it's like a war zone and our limbic system is fully activated and we're bringing up all sorts of emotion-based things from the past, from 20 years ago. It's not productive, and we can say something that could have long-term damage for the relationship. Okay, but what we do want to do is keep coming back to these conversations, raising it again and again and again. Nothing important gets swept under the carpet. All right. Lovely. So we're getting towards the end of the webinar and we're going to leave on this note. So what's the outcome that we're going for in boundaries and assertiveness? And how does this tie into cultivating a thriving intimate relationship? The outcome that we're going for is muy. Okay, so muy is a term coined by Dr. Dan Siegel, which represents the integration of me and we. So me plus we equals muy. And that is an honoring of both the individual needs and perspectives of two separate individuals, as well as the needs of the relationship and the interdependent nature of life. That it's not just two people in a bubble, but there's always a dynamic, there's a crossing over, you know, one influences the other. Okay, so that's what we're aiming for in our intimate relationships, because from that place, we can, who knows, you know, what we will sort of go on to do in life together, but it's coming from a place of having two people with the freedom to be themselves. Wow, how beautiful, magical. Okay. So in summary, we want to help the women that we work with to reconnect to their lost or suppressed feminine and feeling side, the aspect of their self that is continually being expressed through the heart and the body. And at the same time, we want to recognize and honor the masculine aspect in a partner, their autonomy and their drive for freedom. Not freedom from relationship, but freedom to be their own self. Okay, so my final quote that I would like to leave you with, and I quote it a lot in my papers and my training, is this one by Dr. Clarissa Pinkola Estes in her chapter, When the Heart is a Lonely Hunter, from Women Who Run with the Wolves. It's this one. That is how love relationship is meant to work. Each partner transforming the other. The strength and power of each is untangled, shared. He gives her the heart drum. She gives him knowledge of the most complicated rhythms and emotions imaginable. Who knows what they will hunt together? We only know that they will be nourished to the end of their days. It just gives me chills every time. I love it. Okay. Hope you like this picture of this couple. They've made it through the tough times. All right. So that is the end of today's webinar. Thank you so much for coming on live. And I've got time. I'll be here. I'm in no rush. Many of you will have to go now. But if any of you have any questions, please feel free to raise your hand or type it in the chat box. Hopefully you've got lots out of this webinar that you'll be able to implement into your own life, some things that will really resonate for you, and also some things that you can easily implement in your own therapy work with your clients. It's my pleasure. All right, so I don't have any questions or hands up. So I'm going to say thanks so much everyone for today, for attending. And our next webinar is on Thursday, the 12th of May on joy and delight, really important energy in thriving intimate relationships. So I look forward to seeing you then. All right, see you later, everyone.